Okay, we are live then. Good afternoon to everyone watching SK Live, both in India, good afternoon, and in the UK, good morning. Today we have with us Baljit Rihal. Hi, Baljit. Welcome to the show. Baljit is founder of Inventive Sports. And a very happy new year, Baljit. And thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you very much. Happy New Year to you as well, and Happy New Year to all the sports Akita viewers as well. Thank you.
Yeah, great. So, Baljit, I'm going to see you here. We hope, sports gets well soon. I mean, we are back on track again, hopefully soon. So I just want to, check about what happened last year. So tell me about Inventive Sports. What were the challenges you faced as an organization last year because of COVID-19?
Obviously, from the perspective of the agency, I'm based here in London, and I'm very used to traveling to India at least 2 or 3 times a year. Also to watch the ISL, to interact with our staff, to interact with clients, etc. And that's something which I haven't been able to do for most of last year. The last time I was in India was for the ISL in March. So this is just pre-lockdown. I was there for the semi-finals, and then, as you know, the finals were played behind closed doors. So since then, I haven't been back. But in terms of the impact that it's had on Indian football and us as a business, understandably, the clubs have had to be very cautious with regard to finances, etc., and how things have worked. And really, in terms of impact for us, it's meant, for example, wages have been lower for our players, our clients, and that then transcends onto us as the agencies. So that's really the impact that has had, and obviously working with our clients in order to get them to India in the first place has been a challenge around the visas, etc. But apart from that, really, we've been able to do a lot of the business over Zoom calls, a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails, and we have two staff out in India, Wilbur Lazarado in Mumbai and Shakil in Kerala. So that's really made things very easy for us.
Oh, so that's a good start. So, obviously you're based out of the UK. What
Mhm.
prompted you to, start Inventive Sports, venture into the Indian market?
So in the UK, I started my journey in football or in the football industry, working with the English FA around Asian participation in football. So by that I mean people who are born in the UK who come from South Asia. There's a real issue around representation in professional football. So that's how I started my venture into the industry, and we began the Asian Football Awards in 2012, and that was with the FA, and that really opened up our networks. And then in 2012, I took my FIFA license agent exam, and it was a chance meeting that we had with IMG that prompted the entry into the ISL. So we introduced our first client into the ISL, which was Michael Chopra. And really, since then, it's grown. We were mainly looking at international clients, international head coaches like Steve Coppell, for example, and then internationals like Ian Hume. And really, things had stepped up from there. And then I really had that a desire to do something within Indian football. Obviously, being of an Indian heritage myself, there was that natural magnetism that I had. And then really just got introduced to Wilbur and Shaquille, who were very interested in the industry, who were very well connected. And they had said to me, why don't you look at investing in Indian players? And as a company, we thought, what is our ethos? Our ethos is really to grow our players, and it's great to have internationals, and we will still continue to do that. But what is the whole Indian Super League about? And it's about improving the standard of Indian players. So that's really when we started to delve into looking at Indian players. And then with the networks that Shaquille has and Bulba has, we started to look at players, local players, and now we're very fortunate enough to be able to look after players like Sahal, who plays for Kerala, Rahul KP, Joby Justin, and there's so many other players, younger players now that we are looking to work with.
What has your experience been in dealing with all these Indian players?
It's been good. It's been good. I think, like any industry, there will be some peaks and troughs. There are sometimes there are players who approach us who want us to represent them, and we don't take on everyone and anyone. That's not our ethos. Our ethos is not to be an agency that just has a whole load of players. We want to have a select number of players so we can give them the due care and attention. Um, so from that perspective, it's been good. There are obviously players that we have pursued, who we are interested in, and sometimes they may decide to go to a different agency. Sometimes they may decide to come with us. But the way we like to work is we work on reputation, and usually when we get clients, they've been recommended by other players. So we know that we are doing something right for other players to recommend us.
Definitely. Also, do you think there is a scope in near future for Indians to play in Asia or Europe? What do
Yeah,
you think?
absolutely.
Like the current.
Absolutely, absolutely. Listen, since the introduction of the ISL, the level of Indian players, and you can ask the coaches, you can ask international players who've been here, the level of Indian players has stepped up a gear. It really has. Unfortunately, that is not reflected by the Indian FIFA ranking, which unfortunately has gone the opposite direction. But just in terms of level, when you watch it, when I watch it live, when I watch it on the TV, and I've been involved in the ISL since the um, the opening, so I
Inception.
can see the difference. I can see the difference. Um, so from that perspective, yes, there is scope for Indians to play outside of India. Yes, there is scope for them to play in Asia, and I would really encourage them to do that. And it's about opportunities. And again, it's for us, agencies like us, for us to be able to find opportunities for players to play in Australia, to play in Japan, South Korea, Thailand, or even into Europe and the USA. I get asked this question quite often, and people say, will Indian players be able to play in Europe? Yes, they can, but it's about the level. The players who are playing at the ISL now, they will not be paid more than they are paid in India to play over in Europe in terms of their level. So I don't think we have anyone who at the moment who is capable of playing, just say for example, La Liga, Serie A, or even the Premier League level. So from that perspective, I think it's more about the youngsters prior to having an ISL club, or in their first year of having an ISL club, for them to look at Europe for a development experience, spend 2, 3 years there, then see where things go. Perhaps if they want to return to India, they can, or explore Asia. I really think players need to get out of the comfort zone of the ISL, and the ISL is paying players well. Hence the reason why internationals are wanting to come to India, because they are getting paid a lot more in India than they would in Europe.
So, what do you think are the challenges associated you yourself might have faced here, or in the Indian football?
Mhm. Challenges in terms of as an agent, or as in terms of football
Agent
player?
or anything, the entire football realm, how it operates logistically, or the rules and regulations they have.
Um, well, obviously, as an agency, we have to work within the rules. We have to look at who we interact with in the clubs. We have to speak with sporting directors. We have to speak with owners. We have to speak with CEOs about our players, about either introducing them for the first time, trying to get them the contracts. Also, it could be around improving their the contracts. So the challenges could be, it can be around the contracts. For example, there's a player who we recently did a contract for, and the contract bounced back between myself and the club, I think 12 times because of the amendments I wanted. The club was saying, well, this is standard. And I was saying, well, actually, it's not standard because it's our job to protect the player. We put in transfer clauses in there, which hadn't been introduced before, and various other clauses that we had added or we had removed, because our job is to protect the player and our job is to get the best for the player. So in one way, that can be a challenge. And sometimes as well, if there's a club who really wants the player, then they will then allow certain changes. If it is us trying to introduce a player and the club will say, well, it's between that player and the other player, we can't be so flexible on that part. So then apart from that, I think when I first started in Indian football in the ISL, I think many clubs didn't take me seriously. And when I was introducing internationals to them, they were saying, are you sure this is your player? And they were trying to go behind my back, and trying to go to the player to say, are you represented by Baljit? And they were saying yes. So I think initially, yes, but over the years, obviously, I would like to think myself and the company has built up a reputation. So when clubs do approach us and we speak with the clubs, they know that we are the real deal. So.
Okay. Yeah, I hope those challenges are sorted by now, and of course, everybody knows in the sporting realm in India, especially in football, the work you've been doing. Anyway, my next question is: how is the business of football agencies doing in India, and what do you think the future holds for football?
I'll answer the second part first. The future of football in India is tremendous. It's the number two sport in India by far. Some people may argue it's not the number two. There is an appetite for football in India. It's quite evident in terms of viewership of La Liga, Premier League, etc. And there is an appetite for Indian football because people want to be able to relate to the players. And how can they do that is by who looks like them, who has names like them, who comes from the Punjab or who comes from Mumbai, who can be their role models. So in terms of the ISL, I think the ISL has done a great job. It really has. It's very professional. They've done things well, marketing wise. They've promoted the players. Also, if you look from year one to year now, which is I think we're season 7 now, even the wages of players has increased. The amount of marketing on players has increased. Brands who would usually associate themselves with the cricketers now are saying, well, let's look at the new gen, let's look at football players. So that's increased. Even, for example, we did a deal with Puma, and Puma were looking at football players as well. So that's how things have improved on that front. With regard to agencies, there are quite a few agencies now in India. There are some well-established ones, and we like to hope that we are one of those well-established agencies. And there are new agencies who are popping up. That to us says to us that the industry is doing very well. There is scope, there's business. People are interested in football. People are interested in investing in players. People are also interested in not looking at the players only on the pitch, but as a brand. And that's something that we do as well. We look at players as a brand. We look at brand associations. So the landscape for Indian football, I believe, is great, and it's only going to go up. And I hope that the leagues expand. So at the moment we have the ISL, we have the I League. India in itself is a massive nation. It needs to really embrace football, and by doing that, by expanding the leagues, I believe the great things are there to come. I really do.
You earlier mentioned about brands. A lot of brands are taking interest in these players. Do you think enough brands are taking that interest, and why do you think more brands should come forward and sponsor these athletes or partner with these
Um,
athletes?
what's happening, and obviously we've seen a shift from the inception of the ISL to now, and especially over the last 1 or 2 seasons, where brands and global brands are now saying, let's look at India, let's look at more than the cricket. They can see viewerships, they can see players' Instagram followers, they can see the reach that they can have within India. I think it's been a very slow take up. It's not as fast as I had hoped. I'd like to see more Indian brands being involved in sport. And one of the things that we did as Inventive Sports was we introduced Nivea, and I'm sure everyone here has heard of that brand, Nivea. It's synonymous with sports in India. So we introduced the Nivea football to the ISL 2 seasons ago. So they replaced the Puma balls, and now the Nivea ball is the official ISL ball. So by bringing them into football a bit more, bringing them into the mainstream more, it's brought Indian brands in there as well. And I'd like to see more Indian brands being involved in football players, football sponsorship, etc. And I believe, especially now with the Instagram generation, where brands can see the reach that these players have, I think, well, I'm hoping that a lot more will become involved and invest in Indian football.
Do you think COVID will have a negative effect moving forward? Because I mean, in the UK also, the mutant virus is going viral, and here also, like there are many states which have gone, imposed night curfew, and sports activities are about to start as well, but with 50% of the capacity. So, do you think all this is going to have a negative effect on the speed with which football is, speeding in India?
Yes, and it's quite evident by no crowds being available at sports matches, especially like, for example, the ISL. You had the IPL, which happened abroad. The good thing is that the ISL is actually happening in India, which is great. But when you look at football is about fans. Fans are a club's the biggest asset. And if you aren't able to have fans interacting at stadiums, being able to enjoy, being able to, buy food and buy drink and buy jerseys on their way to the stadium, then things will slowly, you know, um, you know, decrease in terms of interest as well. But whatever the ISL has done, whatever Star Sports has done to increase the engagement with fans digitally, online, has been great. But we really do need the interaction. And even when you step down the ladder of football, you look at grassroots, for example, people need to be playing, youngsters need to be playing. And if they're not able to play in their grassroots clubs because of COVID, then of course there'll be an hindrance. Um, Everyone is hoping. I mean, I'm here in London at the moment under lockdown. There has been that new strain, but there's also the good news about vaccines being available and obviously being rolled out. So as fast as they can be rolled out, then obviously I think sport, it will then have a knock-on effect with sport and sports attendance and sports interaction. So again, it's all dependent on how this rolls out, but I'm positive about the future. But of course, it's had a hindrance. It's had a hindrance all last year. So let's hope things improve.
Yes, with the vaccine, we all hope for the same. What role does a player agent have in keeping the players grounded? Especially as you mentioned about a lot of brands, then a lot of commercial involved. So, what is the role of an agent to keep the players
So
grounded?
so as an agency, and I will speak about Inventive Sports because obviously this is what we're immersed in. We've got the staff out in India. We are not only about the execution of the contract with the club and the player, and that's it. We are there holistically. We are there to support. We are there when a player is unable to, secure a contract, when a player is down, when perhaps a player is injured. It's about the support mechanism. And we are very blessed because we have Wilbur and we have Shaquille with us who are able to converse with the players. So maybe something I may not be able to do here in London that they can do quite easily, being there in India and being able to interact and being able to visit them, being able to access various things for them, arranging things for them. It's about support. It's about us offering our advice. If we are asked things about contracts, things which are happening at the club, things that they're not happy with, we act as a liaison. And quite often, I know I have spoken to clubs about certain things, perhaps certain things that managers have said in the press about players, which obviously has a negative impact on the players. I have been quite vocal on that front and spoken to clubs, but really it's about being the support. It's about offering them advice, being there for them. And the great thing about being online, about having WhatsApp, is they can drop you a WhatsApp and say, listen, this is how I'm feeling, and we can then just say, okay, this is our advice, or we can then ask an expert in that field about some advice. And the good thing about our network is it's quite vast. So I can, there's a player at the moment who's gone through an injury, who's being rehabilitated. I've spoken to experts who work for Premier League clubs, for example, and asked them for advice, and then pass that advice on, and obviously spoken to clubs about that as well. But really, it's about being there for them, not just simple, okay, hi, you're a player, hi, you're a club, let's do the deal, let's, as a company, have our commission, and then we just sort of like rub our hands. We're not like that at all. And I think the players who we've worked with, I think they will reinforce that fact as well, especially when we're stuck with players for a long, long time.
So, do you think there is the much emphasis being given on the mental health of these players? I'm talking about the Indian context, in the Indian sporting realm. Do you think there's enough emphasis?
When you have, for example, the season which is going on now, when people are enclosed, they're in a hotel, they're in a bubble for the first, I think, 14 days they were there. They were only in their rooms. They were interacting by Zoom. They were doing fitness via Zoom. That has a toll on mental health. Are clubs doing enough? I think perhaps they can do more, and especially after what's happened here. And even if it wasn't during these times, if you look at international players and you look at players, or even Indian players who are playing for a club, they are in a hotel. They're locked in a hotel, even though they can go out. It's not the same as interacting with family, etc. So that has a mental toll on the players. Of course it does. I know there are certain clubs, I think one or two in India, who have introduced mental well-being, psychologists, etc. I think more needs to be done. I think there needs to be a real emphasis on mental health. It's a big thing in the world at the moment anyway, about speaking your mind, being able to explain to the people about issues that you're having mentally as well as obviously physically. So yes, I think more needs to be done. I think more needs to be invested in that. And India anyway are experts when it comes to the medical field. So I'm sure there's so many mental health experts in India. So if clubs can engage with them, I think it will be great.
Definitely, I agree. A heavy amount contract at a younger age tends to derail certain players. What are your views about that, given your job is to secure the best deal possible?
Players are offered amounts in contracts, I believe, in proportion to the talent. So if one club, for example, were to offer a player X amount, if that player then says, oh no, they will then be offered the same amount, if not more, by another club. As an agency, we want to secure the best deal for a player. We want to secure the best club for the player. So we have had situations where we have a player who is wanted by many clubs, okay? And we have actually agreed a lesser amount for the player at the club that, number one, the player believes they will be able to do well at, and number two, the club that we believe they will be able to do well at. So we have certainly turned down higher offers from other clubs for players. But at the same time as well, like I said, the level has increased from the inception of the ISL so drastically, and especially now because Indian clubs will be able to have less foreign players in their teams. The onus now will be on Indian players to do well, and they need to be rewarded for that. In terms of derailment, we fortunately haven't seen any derailment. It's going to happen. Of course, it's going to happen. It happens in the West. It happens in UK, in Europe, where players are perhaps overhyped, and they have a whole lot of money and they can do X, Y, and Z. They fall into bad habits, etc. I'm hoping that it doesn't happen here. And again, to have an agency, for example, like us, who are looking at the player, looking holistically at the player, we are hoping that that won't happen. But again, around big money contracts, I feel these players do deserve those amounts.
Okay, my final question to you is, Baljit, are you planning to expand into other sports as well? I know you manage players, cricketers, back in the UK. What about in India? Are we looking beyond football?
The idea would be yes. Football it's just become a niche for us. Like I said, we do look after a cricketer who at the moment is actually on tour with the England senior team in Sri Lanka. And that really happened through interactions over football. We got introduced to the player who's called Verdi. Our plan really is to delve into as many sports. Obviously, cricket being a great example of sport in India, we would really very much like to delve into sport. But sorry, the cricket. But yes, we are open to looking at various other sports. We have interest in women's football in India. So that's something that we would really like to get involved in a lot more, and we hope it develops in the country as well. But cricket is one that we would really like to get involved in. Of course, we've spoken about this many times as well, and there are new sports that are being introduced to India as well. There's baseball, American football as well. So the landscape of sport in India is just so exciting. It really, really is. And that's the reason why clubs outside of India are interested in investing in the Indian market itself. But for us as well as Inventive Sports, hence the reason why we are called Inventive Sports, not Inventive Football. It's because we have an interest in sports, and we hope that we will be able to expand in the near future, in the very near future.
Cool. Thank you so much for sparing time to talk to us today, Baljit. I know it's morning. It's a Sunday morning in London, and I hope
Yes.
the virus strain it dies down and the vaccine is rolled out, and I hope sports get back on track like it was before 2020. Thank you for speaking with us, and yeah, hope to see you soon in India.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Daruka. Thank you to Sportskeeda, and hope to see you also. Thank you very much.
Definitely. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.